Hello. You're listening to Career Conversations, a new regular series that's part of the Table Talk podcast from Food Matters Live. I'm Elisa Roche, a chef and food journalist. Together we'll meet experts in cooking, mixology, the environment, psychology, branding, social media and all sorts as we learn about the surprisingly varied roles that go way beyond the kitchen. My guest today is Dr. James Morehen, a performance nutritionist who has worked with some of the biggest sportsmen and women in the world, including the England women's football team, West Ham United, and currently the rugby union side, the Bristol Bears. He also works with elite couch potatoes like myself because he's passionate about everyone feeling their best. James has an incredible new book out called The Performance Nutritionist, which is just perfect for students who want to follow in his footsteps. More on that later, plus some key information about how to get into the fast-paced world of sports nutrition. But for now, settle in and enjoy the podcast. So where are you right now? Can you describe for our listeners where you are?
Yeah, so I'm at home currently in Bicester, which is 20 minutes north of Oxford. Probably everyone knows it for Bicester Village, the shopping place.
That's right, Kate Middleton's favourite apparently.
Yeah, that's right.
So you've got to excuse my lack of knowledge about sports, but I understand you've worked with and are currently working with some of the world's leading athletes. Can you name a few that I would have heard of?
Look, at Bristol Bears, we're fortunate in our squad that we've got Semi Radradra, who is a Fijian Sevens player who's just won a gold medal at the Olympics.
Wow.
We've got Cole Sinclair and Harry Randall that are in the England rugby squad. Chris Vui, who's the Samoan captain. Callum Sheedy's been called up to the Welsh international squad for the Six Nations campaign. So I guess in the rugby world, quite high profile players there. And then I do a little bit of work with some professional boxers, a cruiserweight who is based out of Bournemouth, but Chris Billam-Smith, who's on the up and hopefully fighting for world titles this year.
It must feel really good when you see somebody you've been working with have a great success and win their game or come top of their sport, and you've had a hand in that. How does it feel?
It is rewarding. It's funny, I was speaking to some of my colleagues and friends the other day, and I think if we're honest with ourselves, most people that work in sport are at some level a failed athlete. I'm definitely a failed athlete. I wish I was a professional rugby player, but I was never that good. And so made that choice to do a career and support these guys to the best of my ability from the performance side of stuff. When you can genuinely say that you've impacted an athlete's performance, recovery, their winning try or a gold medal performance, whatever that might be, or even just a body composition change, a favourable drop in fat mass and gain in muscle mass, it is rewarding. And it's nice to see these guys go on and win the games because they deserve the success that they put into the training.
In one of my first podcasts, in fact, my very first ever podcast, I interviewed a lovely nutritionist called Rhiannon Lambert. She's got a new book out as well. What she does is working with private clients. A lot of the time it's women who want to look and feel their best. How is what you do different? What kind of nutrition do you do?
I guess by working with athletes and in sport, inherently they have to perform and they have to perform to the best of their ability at that chosen sport. And so what we're trying to do as performance nutritionists is wrap nutrition around that athlete so that they can perform optimally. The opposite of that is an athlete that goes into a Tour de France cycle ride or a Six Nations Grand Slam game at Twickenham or the Champions League final in football, underfueled, underprepared, dehydrated, and they don't have enough energy and what we call glycogen within the muscle to go on and perform. Where you support them with the evidence-based guidelines and the current literature around the wonderful and ever-expanding area of performance nutrition, you can genuinely impact someone's performance to go on and perform PBs in a race or...
Sorry, what's a PB? Oh, personal best, right?
Personal best, yeah. Or, finish the game stronger than they ever have because all of a sudden they're not running out of energy in the final 10 minutes of a game now. So where I would say it's a little bit different on the private clients or the health and wellness side of stuff is that's probably health and wellness first rather than I want to go and get a PB in my 10k run.
Isn't it terrible that every time you say PB, I think of peanut butter? Just shows you how my nutrition is. Sports people, I would have thought, especially if they're at the top of their game, that they're pretty clued up already about what they should and shouldn't eat. Or am I getting that wrong? And there are a few who still really think they can train and eat all the junk food.
I'm grinning because you would be surprised at how many athletes are uneducated or have been fed the wrong information over their career, or unfortunately get caught up in the whirlwind of social media and start reading and listening to some of the stuff that might be more opinionated rather than evidence based. You'd be surprised at how many athletes are at the top of their game playing for their country or big teams in the UK or in the world, and finish a game and go and have a takeaway after the game because they see it as their biggest training session of the week and they deserve some fried food. But really, is that what the evidence says? 100% not. There'll be a lot of players that still have a beer after a game or drink, and again you look at that and you think, well, is having alcohol genuinely good for the muscle to recover? Probably not. So there's an amazing amount of work to be done, which is why this industry is really exciting.
Well, you're definitely always in work in this industry. Is this something you always wanted to do? Did you come from a sporty family?
I've always played sport, and dad and brothers, we've always been involved in sport. And like I said earlier, I played rugby as a youngster. And performance nutrition was never on the cards originally. It was more about strength and conditioning and the fitness and training side of sport. But as I got older and I was studying at the university, it really started to get my interest around how nutrition could impact somebody's training, adaptation and performance. And it was probably on my master's year that I then started to take a real interest in performance nutrition. But one thing I say to a lot of students that I mentor in the industry now is that one thing that I did have from a very young age was a vision and a goal that I knew where I wanted to get to. If I knew what the goal was and the vision, then I clearly knew what was the path that I needed to go on and the stepping stones that I needed to navigate my journey on to get to the goal of working in professional sport.
What were you originally studying before you specified going into nutrition?
From 18 to 21, I lived in Canada as a snowboard instructor, so I did no studying at all there.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, it was amazing. And the reason I did that was because at 18, I wasn't mature enough to go to university yet. I needed to go and have some fun, so that's what I did. And then at 21, I started a degree in sport and exercise science at Liverpool John Moores. I then went on to a master's straight away in sports physiology. So those two degree programs were not really nutrition heavy. They were quite broad, and I was studying exercise and sport physiology as a whole. And then it was really my PhD where I specialised then in body composition, applied physiology, nutrition, and kind of food and supplements, all to do with rugby players. And I then did a 4.5 year PhD that was embedded within a professional rugby club.
Your studies sound quite science heavy. Is that something that came naturally to you?
If I'm honest, no. I used to struggle in uni in terms of the reading and the writing, I guess, which is a fundamental part of a degree program. But I was that student that really had to put the effort in if I was going to get a good grade. But I had no problems digging in and kind of working hard. And then actually on my master's, there was a particular module that I just could not get on with. And I ended up failing that module and had to resit it, which pulled down the overall master's grade. So yeah, very challenging times, but I guess it was that resilience to then say, okay, this has highlighted the area that you're weak at, and you need to go and read and you need to carry on and keep working hard at it. And then the PhD came. For anyone that's studied one or studying, the PhD journey, really, you have to dig deep and you find out, I guess, really who you are when the going gets tough and studies aren't working properly and you've got friends going over to Marbella and you have to sit in the library in Liverpool and study. It's a tough, challenging time, but that journey is very rewarding when you get there in the end.
So it probably helped that you had that goal in the distance that you wanted to reach.
Correct, yeah. And that's exactly why I sit down every year and look at what my goals are for the year coming up, because things happen in life that you might not have control of, and if you don't have a goal and you've got no idea where you're trying to get to, then I think that's where you can get a bit lost and almost go in circles.
So what is an average working day for you like, if there is such a thing? Are you one of these people who's always up super duper early, you're off for a run, something like that?
Well, I am more so now than ever because we've got a year and a half Hungarian Vizsla who is an absolute brute of a dog. So I am up early. I've always been an early bird, but when I'm in the club at Bristol, it's an early start, get in and train in the morning. It could be anything at Bristol. It could be one-to-ones with players. It could be meeting them for a coffee to have a discussion around nutrition strategies, ordering supplements, doing body composition analysis, helping out with some of the S&C athletic performance guys, meeting with the chef and planning the menus and discussing about how we can improve the food provision. It kind of chops and changes each week, really.
You've got this great new book out, Performance Nutritionist, which answers a lot of the questions that any students listening might have about how to get into this career. How did you go about writing a book? Because you've told me already that doing a dissertation and a PhD was a struggle.
Yeah, after the PhD got done, I was having a fair few students message me on LinkedIn and just asking for general advice around how do I try and get experience with athletes? What degree should I go and study? And it was becoming apparent that more and more people were asking similar questions. So I thought, I'm only N of one. This is my journey, and everyone's journeys is different. And so I reached out to 10 close friends and colleagues in the industry and thought, right, I'm going to interview them and I'm going to ask them about their own journeys and the lessons that they learned in their own careers, the advice that they would have for others, what books should nutritionists be reading. And so, yeah, I went away, spent about 18 months kind of conducting the interviews and transcribing the interviews, and then I managed to get the book out before Christmas. It's a book that I almost wish that I had myself when I started my degree.
That sounds fantastic for any student listening. Can we take away any bite-sized advice for them? Any places they should go and visit, websites, books they should read apart from yours?
It was really interesting actually because the question I asked was, what book would you recommend that's not nutrition based? And one that 2 or 3 people mentioned independently was the James Clear Atomic Habits book, which is all about understanding how you build positive habits and also how you can reduce or get rid of negative habits. And if you think about eating behaviors and nutrition strategies, that is all built upon habits. You know, someone goes to get a coffee in the afternoon and they've built the habit of then grabbing a biscuit with it.
Oh dear, James, that sounds like the story of my life.
Yeah, and they might not be enjoying that. So it's understanding how you can actually tweak that and improve it for the better. And then yeah, another key takeaway from it's not really a book or a podcast, but it was just being a genuinely good person. The All Blacks, the famous rugby team, they have a kind of policy which I won't say the swear word, but it's a no DICK head policy.
Okay, I think we all know that one.
Yeah, and if you are that person, then unfortunately you're out the door, and we don't want you part of our organisation. So I think if you can be a good person, help out where possible, get involved in projects, that goes a long way in our industry.
Things are going brilliantly for you now. You've got this new book out, you've got lots of followers, and you've got your nutrition practice. Did things ever go wrong along the way? Are there any mistakes that stick out in your mind?
One mistake early on, you may have heard of this, the listeners may have heard of this, but it's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. You think you're a lot better than you currently are, essentially. And so when I was on my first year of the PhD, all of a sudden I thought I was the best thing since sliced bread and that I was the most well-known nutritionist in the country and all of this malarkey. I thought that I would run a nutrition seminar in the local town where I was a nutritionist at a club. And my supervisor at the time said to me, don't waste your effort, don't bother doing it, just focus on your studies. But if I'm honest, I was chasing a bit of cash. And so I went ahead, I ran the seminar, and not one person turned up.
Not one.
Not one person. So I'd spent all this time putting together slides, putting some adverts out. I remember ringing my supervisor and telling him, and he said to me, mate, I knew it was going to happen, but you had to learn yourself. That was my lesson, to get firmly back in your box and just get your head down and get your studying done. And the second part of that Dunning-Kruger is that you firmly get back to baseline and you realise your place in your industry. And that's why it's important to learn off of others. So, and then look, I'm comfortable to talk about it, but I had a massive sledgehammer blow 3 years ago when I lost my dad, and it was a fatal cardiac arrest, come out of nowhere. I had 6 months left on the PhD. It was a devastating time for me, but it was out of my control. I couldn't do anything about it. And what was I going to do? Was I going to give up on everything, or was I just going to use that as a bit of motivation to get through the back end of my PhD? And that's exactly what I did. So there's always your ups and downs, isn't there? But it's down to us to control our own journey and our path.
I'm so sorry to hear about your dad, but I'm sure he would be super proud of all you've achieved. You are now really a bit of a brand. How do you go from being an individual to actually becoming a brand? How do you grow yourself as a business? Who do you consult with on that kind of thing?
I don't know whether I'm a brand, but what I've tried doing is just trying to support the next generation of practitioners come through with a lot of my lessons that I've learned, because it's important that we get as many good performance nutritionists in pro sport in the UK, so that we're educating our athletes correctly, so that when we do face European Championships and World Cups, we go ahead and beat the other nations, and we don't get silvers and bronze. More of kind of the businessy side of stuff is a passion of mine. I love doing what I do, and if I can support an individual boxer at the weekend making weight, I'm going to go ahead and do that. If I can support a Formula One driver in his race strategies, then I'm going to go ahead and do it. But likewise, it's the same as helping the local dog walker lose 10 kilos of fat mass because he's overweight.
Well, I think you've hit your target audience there with me. I was about to ask you, for naughty, lazy office workers like me who are a bit slack with the sports, what simple, small changes can I make to just eat a bit better, have a bit more energy and be a bit trimmer?
People's lifestyles are their lifestyles for a reason. It's what they've developed and built up a habit over time. So if at the moment you're someone who rises late and then you're rushing in the morning, and then I've got a meeting at 9, everything's been rushed. A small tweak to that lifestyle there would be setting the alarm 15, 20 minutes earlier, preparing the night before, the trainer's by the front door, the headphones are charged, there's a bottle of water, and then get up, get some clothes on, out the front door, don't even think about it, and go and do a 15-minute walk in the morning. You'd be surprised at how fresh you feel and the good endorphins that are floating around the body now. From a nutrition point of view, we've got a massive problem, I guess, in the Western world where we have this huge over-reliance on carbohydrates. I'll paint you a picture of a classic Western day. It might be a bowl of cereal in the morning. It then might be a Tesco's meal do at lunch, so a sandwich. There are other sandwich shops available. And then dinner might be quite a heavy pasta-based dinner. Then there might be some crisps, or there might be a chocolate bar in the middle. That day, to me, has quite low protein content. If we, as a nation, shifted our reliance of carbohydrates a little bit lower and increased habitual protein content, I think we would begin to see a nation becoming more healthier.
I think what I like about your advice is it feels achievable. I could easily increase my protein, and if I was less lazy, I could easily go for a 10-minute walk a day. So I'm going to give it a go, James, and let you know. What is next for you and your business? Where are you hoping to go with it?
I guess with the business, it's just trying to build up more of a mentorship community. So I've got a good bunch of students now, but I want to make that bigger. And we've got our daughter on the way, 3rd of April. So
Oh, what lovely news.
yeah, the business as well is there for my fiance to kind of get involved in as well. She'll be a big part of that moving forward to keep it growing.
So that's it, world. Watch out, the Morehens are coming for you. It's me again. That was the very nice and very hard-working James Morehen, who always had a dream to work in the field of sports nutrition and made it happen. The lesson there is to have a goal and always be doing something that takes you closer to it. Now, the all-important information I promised at the start. To get into sports nutrition, Dr. James studied for a BSc, that's a Bachelor of Science, in Sports Science, an MSc, Master's degree in Sports Psychology, and more recently he added a PhD in Sports Nutrition to his qualifications, all of this from Liverpool John Moores University. It's worth looking into these courses while striving to gain essential work experience and deciding if you want to specialise, for example, in vegan training programmes or sports injuries. The starting salary is around $21,000 and goes up to about $55,000 a year with experience and a good client list. Of course, if you end up coaching an Olympian, a track or tennis superstar, you're heading into hundreds of thousands. Thank you again to James. His fantastic new book, The Performance Nutritionist, is out now with some brilliant case studies, and there's a link in the description of this podcast. Thank you for listening. Enjoy the jaunty theme tune, and until next time, goodbye.